the backbench motion on the potential merits of a British Jewish History Month. I call Nickie Aiken to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this House has considered the contribution of the British Jewish community and the potential merits of a British Jewish Month. I'd like to first thanking the Backbench Business Committee who agreed to this debate, and for the over 40 members of Parliament who signed my application from across the House, and particularly the Honourable Member for East Renfrewshire and my Honourable Friend for Hastings and Rye for attending the Backbench Committee meeting with me to support me. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have thought long and hard about the timing of this debate, particularly after the October the 7th horrendous attacks and the rise of anti-Semitism that we have seen in this country. Over 1,300% increase in anti-Semitism in London alone in the last year. But I am very certain that we cannot conflate British Jews with the State of Israel. The actual meaning of British Jews is that they are British citizens. It was really brought home to me when I met a group of British Jewish school children in November on behalf of my right honourable friend, the member for Finchley and Golders Green. They were 10-year-olds wearing baseball caps, and when I asked the teacher why are they wearing baseball caps, he told me it was because they had to hide their kippas. And I just thought, how can we get to a state where British children are hiding their identities? And it made me think, you know, what we have to do is we have to celebrate the British Jewish community and thank them for their outstanding, significant contribution that they have made in this country. I'd also like to thank Jonathan Abro, who is a constituent of mine, who led me to also think it was time that we had to change the narrative of the British Jewish community in this country, because he was incensed by Westminster City Council's newsletter on hate crime, which didn't mention anti-Semitism. I know the Jewish community is interested in its own history. The Jewish Historical Society was established in Victorian times, but it is now time, I believe, that the whole nation celebrates the history of our Jewish friends and neighbours. The Jewish community is such a small one. 280,000 British citizens identified as Jewish in the 2021 census. That is 0.5% of our population. Compare that to 6.5% of Muslims, 1.7% of Hindus. For a small minority, the impact the British Jewish community has made in all walks of life in this country is outstanding, and that is why we need to establish a British Jewish History Month. We know that Jews throughout the centuries have arrived in the UK fleeing persecution and murder from other countries and have had to rebuild their lives here. I will give way.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to Honourable Member for securing this debate. Jews have really given a huge contribution to the country over many centuries. In fact, over 200 Jews have served in this chamber. By my count, 218, but that could be contested, including 70 Labour members of Parliament. I want to give an example of one, very briefly. Manny Shinwell, who was a trade unionist who served here and served in the other place until he was 101 and did great things in the Attlee government, showing that we are right across the breadth and spread of the political establishment of the United Kingdom.
Nationalise the stuff.
Member for his intervention, and I will be making reference to Jewish politicians in my speech. But Jews have had to come to this country quite often to rebuild their lives, and this was brought home to me particularly when reading Lord Danny Finkelstein's book, Hitler, Stalin and Mum and Dad. Danny's family history is sadly not unique, but it is a clear example of how two families rebuilt their lives after suffering such trauma, and whose members went on to make significant contributions to both Jewish and British history, including the establishment of the Wiener Holocaust Library. British Jews have played key roles and made major contributions over centuries in the fields of business, science, the arts and politics. In business, perhaps the most loved retail brand we have in this country is Marks & Spencer's, established by Michael Marks and Thomas Spencer. The largest supermarket in this country is Tesco's, founded by Jack Cohen in 1919. Other businesses of note, cinema chain Odeon, Moss Bros, GlaxoSmithKline. All of them have been started by Jewish Brits and have provided so much jobs and so much prosperity to this country. In science, Rosalind Franklin was responsible for discovery of the structure of DNA. Sir Ernst Chain, the co-developer of penicillin. Lord Robert Winston, now based in the other place, a pioneer of fertility treatment, responsible for goodness knows how many children being born in this country and across the world. In the arts, Michael Balcon co-founded the Ealing Studios, one of the most important British studios of this day. The Ealing Comedies came from that studio and started the careers of Sir Alec Guinness and Peter Sellers. Sam Wanamaker rebuilt the Globe Theatre just down the river from us, perhaps one of the most important cultural contributions of the 20th century. Shakespeare's A Merchant of Venice was probably played there. Another example of witnessing historical incidents of anti-Semitism. Monty Norman wrote the James Bond theme, which was then rearranged by John Barry. Actors of stage and screen are absolutely part of our establishment. One of my personal favourites is Dame Maureen Lipman, an outstanding actor, but also a campaigner to ensure that anti-Semitism is understood. And perhaps, Madam Deputy Speaker, one British Jewish male who is responsible for bringing us all together every couple of years to sing and to hopefully bring football is coming home. David Baddiel. Obviously, the English Lionesses have brought football home. We're still waiting for the boys to do it, but I'm sure they will eventually. Turning to politics, the first Jewish MP was Lionel de Rothschild, representing part of my seat, the City of London. Lionel first took his seat in 1847, but it wasn't until 1858 and the Jewish Relief Act that he was recognised as a Jewish MP. The first Jewish peer was his son, Nathaniel. Westminster City Council, where I was proud to be a councillor for 16 years, has been well served by Jewish councillors, both Labour and Conservative, over the decades, including council leaders Dame Shirley Porter, Melvyn Kaplan and latterly Sir Simon Milton. A major political influence on me personally was Simon, as leader of Westminster City Council and later Boris Johnson's right-hand man at City Hall when Mayor of London. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have a British Jew who is probably responsible for my start of my political career when I met the honourable member, my honourable friend, the member for Harlow at Exeter University in our first week there. In the first conversation we ever had, he told me I was a Conservative and I had to join the Conservative Party, and the rest is history. In my constituency, we have evidence of the Jewish presence since Roman Britain. And in Threadneedle Street, the Bank of England is situated there on the site of the London home of Aaron of Lincoln, a Jewish banker who died in 1186. Those familiar with the City of London will have come across the street called Old Jewry. The name is hardly a coincidence because the Great Synagogue of London was based there until it closed in 1272, a few short years before the Jews of England were formally expelled in 1290 by Edward I. It was only in 1656, during the protectorate of Oliver Cromwell, that Jews were invited to return, while Jewish communities would subsequently flourish all over England and further afield in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. I am proud that once again my constituency was the heart of the Jewish Renaissance in this country. And it's home to Bevis Marks, which was built in 1781 and is the oldest continuous synagogue in Europe today. The first Jewish Lord Mayor was Sir David Solomons in 1855. And Madam Deputy Speaker, tens of thousands of Jewish soldiers fought bravely in both the First and Second World War. 5 Jewish soldiers have received the Victoria Cross, and today, even now, every year, the Association of Jewish ex-servicemen and women hold a Remembrance Day parade at the Cenotaph the Sunday after the official Remembrance Day. Having researched this topic, I could speak for hours on the contribution made by individual Jewish people, but I want to just pinpoint one person today who I think has made the most significant contribution in this country over decades, and that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is Dame Esther Rantzen. She started so many incredible campaigns and has made a huge impact on my life, particularly starting with her That's Life programme, where she highlighted in the early 80s the Ben Hardwick organ donation campaign, which encouraged more people to to take on organ donation. I carry an organ donation card because of that campaign. Seatbelt campaign, where she changed the law to make sure that children would be wearing seatbelts in the back of cars. And I note that the father of the house is in his place, and I know he played a significant part in that campaign. Perhaps the most significant campaign she has been involved in, though, since is Childline, and lifting the lid of the heinous crime of child abuse and giving children victims a voice. And I think the work that she has done on Childline, which is now run by the NSPCC, has actually changed the way we deal with child social services as well, and has made a significant difference to many children's lives. She's now moved on to Silverline and outlined the loneliness that so many older people do suffer from, and has helped trying to change their lives. The new film One Life tells the story of the kinder transport set up by Nicholas Winton, and there's a scene in the film which where all the survivors on That's Life stand up and thank him. One of those survivors was one Susie Lind, the grandmother of one of my closest friends, Daniel Esther. She is now at the end of her life, sadly, but she's not stopped campaigning, and with her assisted dying campaign, she is trying to make sure that we all have a good death. I want to pay tribute to Dame Esther and thank her from the whole nation for her outstanding contribution over the last 50 years. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is perhaps no coincidence that today is Rosh... I'm going to get this wrong. Rosh Chodesh, the new lunar month. It is an important day of renewal in the Jewish faith and the Jewish month of Shavat, which also begins today. One of the great verses from the 15th day of Shavat that Moses spoke goes as follows. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of ages past. Ask your parent who will inform you, your elders who will tell you. It is there fitting to debate the merits of British Jewish History Month. It is right that we already celebrate the achievements of many minorities in this country and continue to educate future generations with Black History Month, LGBT History Month, Pride, Islamophobia Awareness Month. The United States established Jewish American Heritage Month nearly 2 decades ago, and I believe it is now time we remind ourselves of the remarkable contribution the Jewish community has made for our nation, often after suffering the greatest hardships, and to celebrate the value of difference. It is time we use the achievements of the British Jewish community to remind ourselves of the values we all share, and remind ourselves that this small minority is British. I hope the government will take this on board and consider introducing a British Jewish History Month. Yeah.